It is time for the news hour. Thank you for joining in. If you're just joining, it is Smart Means Business. Let's get right onto it. The State Minister for Youth and Children Affairs receives skilling equipment. In an effort to enhance creativity and innovation amongst the youth, Stanbic Bank has offered skilling equipment to the Minister of State for Youth and Children Affairs. During a press brief at the Uganda Media Center, the State Minister for the Youth and Children Affairs, Honorable Sarah Mateke Nyirabashisi, was delighted by the gesture of love displayed towards the youth. Andrew Barije has more.
A total of 100 computers proposed to help support the ministry and especially supporting the youth skilling centers across the country were handed over to the State Minister of the Youth and Children Affairs, Honorable Sarah Mateke. Anjuko says due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has led to loss of livelihoods, most especially among the youths, the move is also intended to give a helping hand so as to avert the impacts of the pandemic, mainly to the youth livelihoods. During a press brief at the Uganda Media Center, Anjuko, the CEO, Stanbic Bank, officially declared the issuance of skilling equipment to the State Minister for the Youth and Children's Affairs.
We are pleased to be handing over equipment. It is equipment of 100 computers. These computers will go to supporting the ministry and especially towards the youth skilling centers across the country on matters that make a difference or that lend themselves to solutions that our country seeks. Members of the press, you've all been covering this, and every time I turn on the news, I see the impact of COVID. We're now not talking about COVID per se, we're talking about the impact of COVID. COVID has been a robber in many ways. Not only has it robbed lives, but has robbed livelihoods. And the most impacted in our societies are the youth and the children. They were already marginalized before. It has become worse. And our job, those of us at Stanbic and anywhere else where we can make a difference, is to find ways to make a difference, to find ways to intervene, however small. If there's something you can do, it is important.
Anjuko further explains why in particular they chose to offer computers, as this is due to the rise of the digital age, not only globally but also in the local perspective. This is also to enable the youth digitize their businesses so as to enable them compete favorably, so as to avert the negative impacts of the COVID-19 that it put on the businesses. In this way, the youth are to be prepared for the rising digital global age.
Another lesson coming out of COVID, we already knew this, but it's been accelerated. The digital era is upon us, whether we like it or not, and it's here to stay. We have seen, those of us in the business world, that the businesses that were very quick to digitize and to transform and to do their work in a digital fashion were the only ones that thrived during this period, and they're the ones that are going to continue. So the question begs, how are we preparing our youth for this period? How are we equipping and skilling our youth so that they can compete, so that they can earn a living and have a meaningful, dignified life ahead of them? So today, we stand with you, Madam Minister, in helping to work on the problem of youth employment and youth skills. We know that more than ever before, this country belongs to the youth of Uganda. And they're already more than us, they outnumber us.
Honorable Sarah Mateke was delighted by the gesture of love displayed towards the youth through empowering the youth by use of technology, which is also in line with the National Development Plan 3. Mateke also said the donation is timely as it has been executed in the first year of implementing the NDP 3. Sarah Mateke also says the move has portrayed an investment in human capital development being a guarantee of a secured future for the nation, as she emphasized the need of well-educated and skilled personnel so as to fuel meaningful economic transformation of the nation.
Delighted by this gesture of love and grand stride of Stanbic Bank towards the young people, empowerment through skills development using technology consistent with our aspirations under NDP 3. Your donations of the 100 computers under your corporate social investment portfolio is indeed timely, as it comes in the first year as we are implementing the NDP 3 that prioritizes the human capital development as one of the 18 critical integrated programs in the next 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to emphasize that it is here that a country that invests in its human capital development secures its future. Well-educated, skilled, and healthy human resources are essential to facilitate meaningful development and transformation of our country. In particular, adequate investment in science and technology and innovation is critical for the country to industrialize and to achieve sustainable development. We are certain that the availability of skilled and adequate human capital facilities also facilitate increase in production, productivity, technology growth. Indeed, your donation is equally well catered for under the SDG number 4, which emphasizes
The digital space in Uganda is very innovative and has quickly adapted during the pandemic. Fintechs have offered payment options, and digital solutions have reinforced and enabled a variety of sectors to develop solutions in regards to challenges faced during operations. These solutions, if upscaled and developed to their potential, would boost the digital economy and maximize its benefits to Ugandans.
And all right, from that matter, 2 years down the road, schools have been closed. And 2 years, the only chance students have got to attend class is by following up on online lectures or online classes, but that is by using their smartphones, personal computers, and the internet. And of which a few of the students have been able, or a few of the parents have been able to facilitate their children with such services. But with this particular one, if you look at this equipment that was received by the State Minister for Youth and Children Affairs, a total of 100 computers and proposed to help support the ministry and especially supporting the youth skilling centers across the country were handed to the State Minister for the Youth and Children Affairs, Honorable Sarah Mateke Nyirabashishi. And Anjuko, the CEO of Stanbic Bank, says that due to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, which has led to loss of livelihoods, most especially among the young people, the move is also to give a helping hand so as to avert the impact of the pandemic to mainly the livelihoods and the young people. And during this particular one, she handed it over, saying that they declared the issues of skilling equipment to the Minister of State to help out in improving the livelihoods of the youth. So these are initiatives of giving back to platforms, and there was a few weeks back, a certain bank as well offered equipment to the Ministry of Education. So these are all equipment that are going to be helping out in the education sector. So banks giving back to community, giving back to the youth. We're in an era of digitization, an era whereby each one of us needs to actually get something out of the innovation world. You need to know, at least have an idea of what is happening in the world. And the only chance is to improve facilitation among the young people, among the youth, because if we do so, it is their era. It is the ones that we're definitely looking at to secure their future. And if you're to secure a future of the young person, is to facilitate them with the necessary equipment. The digital space in Uganda is very innovative and has quickly adapted during the pandemic. Fintechs have offered payment options, and digital solutions have reinforced and enabled a variety of sectors to develop solutions in regards to challenges faced during operations. These solutions, if upscaled and developed to their potential, would boost the digital economy and maximize its benefits to Ugandans. Sarah Mateke says that the move has portrayed an investment in human capital, in the human capital development being a guarantee of secured future for the nation. She emphasized the need of well-educated and skilled personnel so as to fuel meaningful economic transformation of our nation. Okay, and away from that, let's move on to the next story. The Uganda Local Government Association is set to fight increasing corruption cases at the district levels. During a press brief at the Uganda Media Center, the president of the Uganda Local Government Association, Richard Rabuhinga, called on local leaders at all levels to fight corruption to improve service delivery. Let's have more of this story. As Uganda joins the rest of the world to commemorate the World Anti-Corruption Day on 9th December, Uganda Local Government Association has called upon the local leaders at the district levels and lower governments to step up their fight against the increasing cases of corruption. During a press brief at the Uganda Media Center, the president of the Uganda Local Government Association and also doubling as the district chairperson Kabarole District, Richard Rabuhinga, said that they applaud the government for efforts it has laid to fight against corruption. But however, also mentioned that there has been drastic increase in the corruption cases.
Governments of Uganda applaud the tremendous efforts exhibited by both the government and the local governments in curbing corruption through the legal anti-corruption framework, including but not limited to the Anti-Corruption Act 2019, the Penal Code Act, the Inspectorate of Government Act 2002, the Public Finance Management Act 2002, the Leadership Act, and several anti-corruption institutions, including the Inspectorate of Government being the lead anti-corruption agency, the Directorate of Ethics and Integrity, the Auditor General. It is presented by the aforementioned government legal anti-corruption framework and the various strides taken to curb corruption by respective actors at all levels. We realize that the drastic increase in the magnitude of corruption in Uganda over the years is visible, as well as the persistent poor performance of the country's.
On this note, Rabuhinga urged the district local leaders to set up plans right from the grassroots in order to fight the cases of corruption and unmask those that are spearheading the corruption tendencies in Uganda.
Upon all local government leaders in our respective districts, cities and lower local governments to design a plan of action in the fight against corruption, including mobilizing your constituents to join the war to eliminate corruption in Uganda. We note that the main victims of corruption are not in the air-conditioned boardrooms or in the chauffeur-driven vehicles, but rather they are the people on the grassroots. This woman who goes to deliver and is unable to access a midwife. This person who is unable to reach the market to sell his or her produce. This person who goes for services and is unable to get the services because of the absentee officers. We are saying these are the victims. And therefore we invite them to join in the fight against corruption, to unmask the faces of the corrupt and give corruption a face. Two, we appeal to the districts, cities and lower local governments, and in particular, call on the office of district chairpersons and mayors respectively, as heads of local governments and speakers as chairs of local government council, to the local government councils in their respective areas at their next council sitting to adopt a resolution and actions to promote active citizen participation in social accountability for improved service delivery in Uganda.
Meanwhile, the representative of the speakers of Northern Uganda on the ULGAS committee says that the fight should start from the grassroots, as the wish to fight out corruption in Uganda will come to reality if everyone takes part.
One of the key recommendations which came from ULGA, the voice of all local governments, is that an appeal be made to all the districts, cities, and the lower local government councils to ensure that there must be a particular motion in the order paper to address the issue of corruption in this country. I am appealing to the rest of the speakers in this country to pick the message which has come from the ULGA to ensure that in our subsequent meetings, these motions be put, discussed, and resolved on. the impact of corruption in local governments is felt more especially when you, as a speaker, you are chairing the council session. It is from this that we think the fight against corruption in the country, which initially was done by IGG and other organizations.
The International Anti-Corruption Day is observed globally on December 9th to raise awareness of corruption and of the role of the Convention in combating and preventing it. The theme for the International Anti-Corruption Day 2021 is Your Right, Your Role, Say No to Corruption, and Uganda will be joining the rest of the world to commemorate it. The theme for the the International Anti-Corruption Day 2021 is Your Right, Your Role, Say No to Corruption. It is your right and it's your role to say no to corruption. It being your right, corruption should not hinder development in the country, but then it's supposed to be your role to see that we fight corruption. It starts with us from the grassroots. The president of the Uganda Local Governments Association, Richard Rabuhinga, says all local leaders at district levels, at the lower district levels, should all follow up in the chase against this and in the fight against corruption. So with that matter, we can all agree that yes, it is what is supposed to be done. It is what we all need to do to fight against corruption. And if we saw maybe in the next few years, it will become a reality without corruption. But again, it goes back to our policymakers, the top government officials in there, just like the president of the Uganda Local Government Association did highlight, those in the car, in the chauffeur-driven vehicles and in big offices should also be part of the people fighting against corruption. And with that, we can definitely end it. Let us fight corruption, because if you look at the increasing level in the last 3 years, there's a sharp increase in the corruption cases in Uganda. Okay, away from that, let's move on to the other story. Fish exports have registered a 25% growth, and the highest since last year, according to data from the Bank of Uganda. In data contained in the monthly Bank of Uganda Commodity Performance Report, the fish earned Uganda $11.4 million, which is 40 billion shillings, up from $8.4 million, 30 billion shillings earned in September. Let's have more of this story. In data contained in the monthly Bank of Uganda Commodity Performance Report, fish earned Uganda $11.4 million, which is approximately 40 billion shillings, up from $8.4 million, approximately 30 billion shillings earned in September. This was a 10 billion shillings or 25% increase in earnings during the period. According to the report, a total of 1,608 metric tons were exported, increasing from 1,139 metric tons in September, which represented an increase of 25% in volume. Sujal Goswami, the Uganda Fish Processors and Exporters Association chairman, said the growth in value and volume had been noticed in October, November, and part of December, building on a 3-year trend. The performance comes at a time when stakeholders are consulting and discussing the amendments in the Fisheries and Aquaculture Bill 2021, which had been shelved by Parliament for almost 15 years. Earlier, Ovia Katiti Matovu, the Uganda Fish Processors and Exporters Association Chief Executive Officer, says it was important that Parliament expedites the bill that seeks to create safeguards for the different stakeholders involved in the fisheries sector. It is important to note that the fish export industry under the Uganda Fish Processors and Exporters Association only exports about 30% of the total fish harvested. Out of the total exports, the Uganda Fish Processors and Exporters Association contributes 90% of realized revenues. Data from Uganda Bureau of Statistics indicates that Uganda annually exports an average of 14,976 tons of fish and fish products. The largest exports remain coffee at 364,298 tons per annum, compared to cotton, which contributes 19,595 tons Tea contributes 75,189 tons, while tobacco stands at 23,038 tons. And on that matter, if you're to continuously look at how the exports have been varying, let's first look at a little bit of how our exports have been performing in the country. And looking at here, if you're to look at coffee, which is the largest and still remains the largest export from Uganda, we export it at around 364,298 tons per annum. Then compared to cotton, which contributes 19,595 tons. Then tea contributes 75,189 tons, while tobacco stands at 23,038 tons. So look at that. So with the increase of, if you're to look at the fish exports, our average has been 14,976 tons of fish and fish products. But with the end of this year, we shall have to analyze and see how far it is faring. But with the data compiled by the Bank of Uganda, you can easily tell that there has been a rise in the performance report, the commodity performance report, as fish earned as 11.4 million, up from the 8.4 million in just 2 months, which recorded a 25% growth, the highest since last year. That is according to the Bank of Uganda. And the performance comes at a time when stakeholders are consulting and discussing these amendments in the Fisheries and Aquaculture Bill 2021, which had been shelved by Parliament for almost 15 years. And according to the report, a total of 1,608 metric tons were exported, increasing from 1,139 metric tons in September, which represented an increase of 29% in volume. And so that is an increase of 25%. And speaking of which, let's try to look at what is happening across the border. Let's head to the international scene as the US advises against travel to Tanzania over COVID-19 risk. Washington has put 5 countries, including Tanzania, on its red list, advising its citizens against travel to these nations. Let's have more of the details.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has put Tanzania together with France, Portugal, Andorra, Cyprus, Jordan, and its high-risk countries, discouraging American citizens from traveling to these destinations over COVID-19 related risks. The alert comes as the U.S. Embassy in Dar es Salaam warned that community transmission of the novel virus continues across Tanzania. In September, Tanzania started reporting limited aggregated weekly numbers to the World Health Organization. On Sunday, it emerged that an Indian who traveled from Tanzania had tested positive from the Omicron variant in New Delhi, India, prompting authorities to start investigations. Despite frequent warning alerts from Tanzania's health ministry, public compliance to COVID-19 prevention measures has remained low, the U.S. Embassy said. Data is not shared with the public in Tanzania. The government is promoting mitigation measures such as hand washing, masks, and social distancing, but public compliance remains low. It added, as of November 28th, publicly available data shows that Tanzania has recorded 26,273 COVID-19 cases and 731 deaths. However, no new data has been made public for the same time. Despite frequent warnings, alerts from Tanzania's Ministry of Health, public compliance to COVID-19 prevention measures has remained low, say the U.S. Embassy in Dar es Salaam.
So data is not shared with the public in Tanzania as the government is promoting mitigation measures with such as hand washing, masks, social distancing, but public compliance remains low. Oh, that is according to reports coming in from the U.S. Embassy. On Sunday, it emerged that an Indian who traveled from Tanzania had tested positive for the Omicron variant in New Delhi, as India prompting authorities to start investigations. And despite frequent warning alerts from Tanzania's health ministry, public compliance to COVID-19 prevention measures has remained low. And despite frequent warning alerts from Tanzania's health ministry, it has actually remained low in terms of the prevention measures from the people in Tanzania. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has put the Tanzanian together with France, Portugal, Andorra, Cyprus, Jordan, and Liechtenstein under its high-risk countries, discouraging American citizens from traveling to these destinations over the COVID-19 related risks of the Omicron variant. The alert comes as the U.S. Embassy in Dar es Salaam warned that community transmission of the novel virus continues across Tanzania. And in September alone, Tanzania started reporting limited aggregated weekly numbers to the World Health Organization. But then on Sunday, it emerged that an Indian who traveled from Tanzania had tested positive for the Omicron variant when he traveled back in New Delhi. That was in India. So the US has advised its citizens against travel to Tanzania. And then lastly, with the news hour, South Africa is set to deport illegal migrants to Kenya in a deal with President Uhuru Kenyatta. South Africa will deport all illegal migrants, including other nationals, to Kenya as part of a new deal that will relax the current strict visa restrictions for Kenyans. Under the new deal, if you're to look at this, brokered. President Uhuru Kenyatta has been the broker for this particular one, and his South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, following a state visit to the country by the president last month, it will now be the responsibility of Kenya to block all illegal migrants from entering South Africa from Kenya. Kenya will also be required to take back the deported illegal migrants from South Africa who entered the country from Kenya, shifting the burden of curbing the flow of illegal migrants to Nairobi. The South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor said on Sunday Kenya and South Africa reached a deal about the deportation amid an increase of people from abroad to Kenya when driving to South Africa. The tough South African visa restrictions from the Kenyan travelers have prevented free entry into South Africa and made it difficult to do business in South Africa for Kenyans. The restrictions, which have remained a thorny issue for the two countries, include 500 and 350 Kenyan shilling processing fee that takes at least 5 working days to process, as Kenyan visa applicants must also provide sufficient proof of funds. Return flight air tickets, among other things. South African nationals, on the other hand, have it easy as they can get a Kenyan visa for free on arrival to the country. South Africa exported 45.7 billion Kenyan shillings worth of goods to Kenya in 2020, against imports from Kenya of 3.48 billion Kenyan shillings, signaling trade is heavily skewed in favor of South Africa amid the restrictions. Kenya and South Africa set up a committee to deal with difficulties related to visas following a state visit by President Kenyatta. That's all from the news hour. And after the break, we're heading to the business diaries and the topic analysis. I'll be right back.